Blood sugar numbers can be really helpful in understanding our body's response to different foods, exercises, and lifestyles. But did you know that your blood sugars can also be very misleading in what they point us towards? And actually today, my own blood sugars tried to trick me and throw a wrench in my plans. And I'll tell you why I did not treat a looming, oncoming, urgent low. And what happened instead that allowed me to stay perfectly in range through an absurd triathlon workout. Now, if you don't know who I am, my name is Matt Vandevecht. I'm a certified master fitness trainer and nutritionist living with type 1 diabetes. Love to experiment on myself, and today's experiment went amazingly, shockingly well. And I want to share with you the interesting distinction that just might save your behind with blood sugars as well. Let's get into our theme song, and then I got a story for you. Today's workout, I was supposed to go out and swim a mile and then run 3 miles as fast as I could. And in the world of triathlon, this is called a brick workout, where you're supposed to do one workout and then go straight into the next workout of a different sport. If you haven't been following the videos for a while, I'm training for an Ironman right now, which is a crazy race. And as a type 1 diabetic, it's crazy difficult to manage blood sugars with. And so swimming has always presented a challenge for me because I wear devices. I've got this one right here and this one right here. I'm actually wearing 2 CGMs right now, but I also have an insulin pump. And these devices are very helpful in giving me lots of data, lots of information on my blood sugars, and I love to analyze it. In fact, for my clients, I actually work exclusively with insulin-dependent diabetics on figuring out their blood sugar numbers, and I love analyzing the blood sugar graphs, the insulin settings, the formulas that we set up for them, the blood sugar formulas, and that's actually what I use for my own management, and that's how I can train for these ridiculous endurance athletics without having blood sugars that go crazy. But today was a little bit different, and I want to talk about that for a second. So today, went out for a swim, woke up at sunrise so we could get out because it was July 4th weekend. And I did not want to mess with the sea-doos and the boats and the crazy people, the weekend crowd, right? So I went up super early and met my dad at the bay so he could paddleboard next to me in hopes that if there were boats that were, wakeboarding or tubing or something, that he could protect me from getting run over as I got my head in the water swimming for a mile plus, So he joined me. And I have him carry my phone, my keys, and a bottle of sugar water. It's got a ton of carbs in it, but also has electrolytes and all that, just in case I happen to go low and have a mishap with blood sugars. Now, that's not happened ever at this point, thankfully, but him being next to me with my phone on him allows my Bluetooth CGM devices to periodically connect. So it does get enough of the readings. And it's really interesting to see what my blood sugars do while I swim, because I can't see them. Right, which is also why I use blood sugar formulas to predict where blood sugars are going to go on my own, because I don't get to see my blood sugars when I'm out in the ocean or out in the bay, right? So I have to trust the formulas to keep me in range so I don't go high or low. Now, this day was a little bit different. I think my CGM had a mishap. I can't tell you for sure because ultimately, blood sugars don't always cooperate. I am not perfect either, and every once in a while I have highs and lows too. And today, in my graph after the swim, we got back to the car. I was changing to get ready for my run. I told you it was a back-to-back workout, right? So swim a mile, run 3 miles, and as I'm changing, I hear the drop sound on my CGM. This doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. I'm like, oh no, that's at least an arrow down, which means I'm dropping rapidly. So I was like, hey Dad, I need to get my phone out of your backpack and see where we're at. So he pulls it out and I was double arrows down at 136. Now what's interesting is that before the swim, I had entered higher than I typically do because I was doing a full stretching routine, had a snack, and the snack brought me up a little higher. So it was 173, but stable. But during the swim, my CGM showed that I had reached about 250. Now that's the part that I don't know if it's completely accurate because it spiked and then dropped. And anytime I see rapid fluctuations that start and end in a near similar spot, I always wonder if the CGM's having one of its crazy days. It's like a compression low. If you've never heard of that, this is more common with the CGMs of old. A couple of years ago, this is a lot more common. But if you sleep on top of your CGM, sometimes it has a compression low where it pushes the wire past the interstitial fluid that the CGM is reading into nothingness, and it reads your blood sugar as 0. And so it'll go, from 100, you're fine, stable, 0. And it'll just say low across the screen. Can't tell you how many times I've gotten texts at 3 o'clock in the morning from people who follow me on my Dexcom devices, like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. A finger stuck. It says I'm 100 on my finger pricker. And then it'll jump back to 100 as if to say, just kidding, you're fine. Frustrating, to say the least, especially if you treat for that, right? Have a juice and it turns out you didn't need it. Anyways, besides the point. So whether I hit 250 or not is besides the point. Not going to say it's impossible, because I've had those days before as well. So maybe I hit 250, maybe not. But the point is, I was now 136 and double arrows down. So I told my dad, I was like, hey, I know you're taking off right now. He was packing up his paddleboard. And I was like, can you just kind of keep an eye on your phone? Obviously, I'm heading out for a run right now. Runs typically push blood sugars down very fast for me. And I'm already dropping very fast. And so I'm like, let's see where this goes. I might call you in the next 5 or 10 minutes to come pick me up, if I pass out or something. It's because now, as he's finishing packing up, it's been 5 minutes. I get a new update, same alert, 116, double arrows down. So it's picking up speed, dropping at a little over 20 points per 5 minutes. So the next reading could be, in the 80s or 90s. Next reading after that, urgent low. So I'm potentially 10 minutes away from an urgent low. Now, what's interesting is that I wanted to treat that. I have my bottle of sugar water, and I'm looking at it like, I'm about to go for a run, and that's going to push me down further. Do I take sugar or not? Now, I did go for the run. And the reason is that the whole purpose behind the back-to-back workouts is to increase your aerobic potential, right? To make the workouts harder than they were if you were to do them one at a time. So if I were to sit for 15 minutes, treat that drop, and wait it out to make sure I was okay, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of doing a back-to-back workout. So I made the decision to hop out, go for the run, and treat as I go, to look at the updates. Now, first distinction here is I want you to think about treating more than just the number, but the context of the number. So I kept an eye on my CGM, and within 5 minutes into my run, check the next reading, right? From 116 double arrows down, it was now 109 single arrow down. So at the very least, I know it's slowing down, right? It's not speeding up. So that's really important information for point number 2, which is the context of the situation that is also impacting blood sugars. So think about the situation itself, right? And this is the entire thing. I'm showing my t-shirt now. It should show on screen. It says think differently. This is what the Renegade Warriors are all about, right? We think differently about these scenarios. We don't just see a dropping blood sugar and go, oh no, I need sugar. We think, why? Why is it dropping? And not just the first thought that comes to your head. So first thought for me, obviously, is I just got out of the ocean, or it was the bay technically. I was swimming, I swam over a mile, and that exercise leads to a drop in blood sugars. So that makes sense. It should continue to drop, right? But what's also important for us to consider is that for me, on an insulin pump that is not waterproof, I was disconnected from my insulin pump for the previous 45 minutes while I was swimming. So I also have a 45-minute gap where I've received 0 basal insulin, which means there's a possibility that it evens out and goes higher. So with that information, because I am thinking differently, I'm aware of more context. I have a deeper understanding of this rapidly falling blood sugar. And heading into a run, I now have 2 choices. 1 is to treat the drop so that I don't drop further. And 2 is to ignore the drop because I haven't been wearing a pump for 45 minutes and I know my patterns, right? I've been doing Ironman and triathlon trainings for a couple years now. Maybe a year and a half, 2 years, I don't know. Not super long, but long enough to have tracked my patterns, right? But option number two would be to not treat the drop, but to treat for the run. And this is the option that I chose. So during the run, I will still burn glucose, right? We talk about this in our programs. We get very precise. As you can tell, I'm a numbers guy. I like analytics behind blood sugars. I like to have certainty. I like to know that blood sugars are going to cooperate. So I've calculated my glucose burn rate. I know exactly how many points my blood sugars are going to drop based on the duration and intensity of this run. I've got a 3-mile run. I'm expected to hit a faster pace than I typically do, so I'm working harder. And based on my calculations, I need 25 grams of carbs. So I had a Morton's gel. This is a gel that Ironman courses use, so I'm also getting familiar with the on-course nutrition that they'll be offering on my race day. But the 25 carbs is very important. It was not 15, which is the generic advice to treat a low, right? So typically people see double arrows down and they go, 15 carbs, right? Because we were taught the rule of 15. The other side is seeing that and panicking and having 50 grams of sugar, which I've also done in the past. I learned from that mistake, thankfully. So didn't have 15, didn't have 50. It was not a random snack. It was a calculated amount of sugar that I had selected before I even got to the bay for this workout. And it's because I knew what my glucose burn rate was for this specific run. I also had a snack before I went swimming because I knew exactly how many carbs I would need for that type of swim. These are things that I enjoy having more certainty behind because I'm doing risky things with diabetes, what doctors might consider risky, right? As a renegade, it's kind of just what we do. We live our lives and we let diabetes tag along for the ride. But what's interesting is that double arrows down at 136, double arrows down at 116 turned into a single arrow down at 109, no arrow at 107, which means my CGM is freaking out because it doesn't know why I'm not dropping as fast as it thought I was. Next reading, no arrow again, 106. Following reading, I think it was 110. Following reading, 122. Following reading, 136. Following 145. Following 150. And that's where I finished my run at 150, and then it dipped to 137. Beautiful finish. I mean, that's exactly where I want it to be. 150 is my target for my Ironman trainings because it allows me to have a buffer where I can drop and I'm okay, and there's still some room to go a little higher, and I'm not in the risk of DKA realm yet, right? So 150 I target allows me to have a lot more wiggle room as I'm training, but coming down after that, I always aim to have it during training at 150 and ending training about 110 is my goal. So after that 150, it dropped into 137, and as you'll see in the screenshot and post on the screen, it then dropped to 127 and is heading towards that 110. Now, had I treated for the drop and my glucose burn rate, I would have been sky high. Right, I would have felt sick that entire run. Instead, 25 grams of carbs pushed me exactly to 150 and then dropped me exactly to 110 because it was pre-calculated. I knew what I was going to do with this run and I knew how to plan ahead for this, right? So two things to consider. One is the exercise type and intensity and blood sugar formulas, right? I calculated all of this the night before. I knew exactly what was going to happen with my blood sugars, and I had a contingency plan of what if this, what if that, right? If you've been following for a while, you know I teach formulas in all capacities. One of my favorites is if, then, unless. If blood sugars are dropping, then I eat sugar unless I've been disconnected from my pump for the last 45 minutes. Right? You always have to add that context to the end of it. Now, the second piece here is that if you look at just the surface level with diabetes, you will often be left frustrated and confused because you're not going to know why blood sugars aren't behaving. You'll see the double arrows down, treat as you should, right? Because that at the surface level looks like it's going to be an urgent low in about 10 minutes. So it makes sense logically to treat that as if it were going to be a low with at least 5, 10, maybe 15 grams of carbs, right? However, if then unless, when we add context, when we look below the surface level, they always talk about the iceberg analogy. You know, the iceberg, it shows this tip on top of the water, but there's a mountain beneath the water. There's a mountain of knowledge waiting for you to discover it about blood sugars, blood sugar management, blood sugar formulas. And if you don't understand what is below the surface, you will continue, like the Titanic did, to crash. Or I guess you could also say the Olympic, depending on which conspiracy theories you believe. Is it the Titanic that sank or the Olympic for insurance fraud? Different story, you can Google it. But the big point to take home here is you need to look below the surface of your blood sugars. It's not just the number, it's the context behind the number that allows us to think differently. To think, I've been disconnected from my pump for 45 minutes. I have missed a lot of basal insulin. Heck, I might even be able to dose some insulin, even though I'm dropping right now, and I might still level out and be okay, right? And I'm not giving any medical advice in this episode or ever, honestly. Please don't take this as medical advice. Seek the counsel of your doctors. I hope you have good doctors, though honestly, unlikely. There's a lot of gaps in the medical system, unfortunately. But that's also why I created the FTF Warrior Company, to fill those gaps. And now we educate other type 1s on what is below the surface, right? And by the way, this stuff is all going into my book that's coming out in just a couple of weeks, which is really exciting. But it's also stuff that I'm teaching in a live challenge we're doing right now called the Blood Sugar Formula Challenge 2.0. We actually just started yesterday at the time of filming this episode, or at the time this episode goes live. It will have been yesterday, but too late for that. So what I want you to think about right now is what has been below the surface with your blood sugars that you might have missed. Right? And you're not going to know everything. That's kind of the point. You need to get curious and start learning, either from trial and error and your own mistakes, which is one way to learn, though it's slow and painful, or learn from the mistakes of others. And that's faster, safer, and honestly, more enjoyable. And that's why we have coaching programs. That's why we do challenges. That's why I'm writing a book, so you guys can learn from my mistakes. Today, that could have been rough. It wasn't. But it's not rough today because I have made mistakes in the past, many times, that I had to learn from and document and adjust and adapt and build formulas around them. And these are the things that I walk my clients through, right? So if this is something that is like putting some sparks in your head and you're like, oh, wait a second, there's more to blood sugars than just insulin and carbs. It's because it's true. And you're likely missing a large piece of the puzzle, or as we call it, a large piece of the map. If you don't know how to get to the end destination of a solid A1C and great time and range while eating foods that you love and exercising and playing with your kids or your grandkids, it's because you haven't been given the right directions. You haven't been given a complete map to your blood sugar management. Now, the best way to do that is to learn from the mistakes and lessons of others. So if you have not yet set up your blood sugar formulas, if you're new here, or if you're just, you've been lurking for a while, kind of living behind the shadows and behind the scenes, you got to go check out the training that we introduce blood sugar formulas. It's not going to fix everything, but it will introduce blood sugar formulas, help you get an idea for how you might set up your own blood sugar formulas. And you can go check that out at diabetesinaction.com. That's the best place that you can get started right now. We're running a live challenge at the moment, but it's too late to sign up for that. If you're not part of our ecosystem, you probably didn't even hear about it because we keep things kind of quiet. I prefer to work with smaller groups of people because it allows me to get a lot more personal and give them more nuanced responses to their questions, because everybody has a little bit of a different experience with diabetes, and it's important that we map out our strategies to match our needs and not these cookie cutter needs of what the medical system thinks that all diabetics should follow. I'll give you one little shocker. We should not all be following the same diabetes diet. We shouldn't all follow the same exercise plan. We have different preferences, allergies, limitations, things that we don't care to accomplish, things that we want to accomplish. As such, everything must be custom tailored, and that's why blood sugar formulas exist in the first place, is to have a more customized, personalized experience with your diabetes management. So, takeaway from today, blood sugars are not always giving you the full picture. And it's important that you take a step back, look under the surface at what else might be leading into this fluctuation in blood sugar, or why our blood sugar is stable, right? Always asking yourself, why? To help you get to the root cause. And the faster you can do that, the faster you'll learn, the faster you can adapt, and the faster you can live your best life with diabetes. And stop focusing on surviving and focusing more on thriving with type 1 diabetes. So blood sugar formulas, it's the way that I do what I do. It is focused on precision. If you hate the idea of precision, you should probably just stop watching, stop listening. It's kind of all I do. If you like the idea of more certainty in your blood sugar, so you can have confidence in your dosing and your activities, your meals, and actually have true flexibility and not be stuck to low carb or restricted workouts, go to diabetesinaction.com. That's how we actually live out what that is. Diabetes in action. You should be able to live your life with diabetes in action. You shouldn't be holding back. You should be able to do what you want to do that's the best place to figure it out. At least get that journey started. All right, so diabetesinaction.com. I hope this one was helpful. I hope this lit some light bulbs in your head and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this makes more sense now. Not all blood sugars are the same and they all have different meanings, and it's important that we use our detective hats to get to the bottom of it. So if you enjoyed this one, let me know. We'd love to see your comments or questions. I often respond to those, and happy to see you guys down there giving me feedback. Let me know if you hated it, if you loved it, that's great too. If you're listening on the platforms, would mean the world to me if you take just 30 seconds of your time, leave a review for the podcast. If you're listening on one of those devices, to let other people know where there is some good information alongside some crazy stories. And if you're here for the book, thanks for joining, and it's coming out very soon. I've been working on it for years, and it's a passion project of mine. So last time, diabetesinaction.com. Go check it out, and be sure to check out the other episodes after you come back from that training. We'll see you guys next time, and keep up the fight.